Welcome to Nazir Fears, where fear finds you. Do you dare to enter a world of unspeakable horror and chilling mysteries? If you love creepy true stories, urban legends, haunted places, and terrifying experiences, you're in the right place. What we offer: spine-chilling horror stories, dark and mysterious urban legends, real-life encounters with the supernatural, psychological horror and unexplained mysteries, new nightmares. Every daily upload a new video only for you. Subscribe if you dare. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You never know what's lurking in the dark. Michael Carter had always been a man of logic, a journalist dedicated to uncovering truths. Yet nothing in his career had prepared him for what awaited behind the doors of the old Crescent Hill Hotel. For decades, rumors had circled about Room 23. Guests who stayed there vanished, some never to be found, others emerging days later in a state of near catatonic terror, muttering about unseen forces that watched and whispered from the darkness. When Dr. Lillian Hayes, a psychologist specializing in trauma and supernatural phenomena, invited him to investigate firsthand, he had hesitated, dismissing it as folklore and sensationalism. But curiosity, the very trait that had driven his career, pushed him through the cracked, weathered doors of the hotel, where the air itself seemed heavy with anticipation, thick with a chill that cut deeper than mere temperature. Officer Reid, assigned to accompany them for security and documentation, followed silently, his years of experience with criminal investigations giving him a wary edge. The foyer of the hotel was a monument to decay, chandeliers coated in dust, carpets threadbare and stained, the wallpaper peeling as if attempting to flee the walls. The silence was near absolute, broken only by the faint creak of floorboards under their feet, though shadows moved independently in corners, stretching unnaturally toward the three intruders. Michael tried to rationalize it, attributing the movements to failing light and fatigue, yet the sensation of being watched gnawed at him, an instinctive dread that defied reason. Room 23 was on the top floor, down a hallway where light struggled to reach, and as they approached, the air grew inexplicably colder, heavy with an almost sentient pressure. Michael's flashlight flickered as they reached the door, the brass number 23 tarnished and distorted, as though reflecting more than just the light. Dr. Hayes placed her hand gently on the doorknob, murmuring that the room itself had memory, an imprint of every tragedy that had unfolded within. Michael laughed uneasily, though a chill ran down his spine. Officer Reid nodded, cautious, instinctively aware that the warnings were not mere superstition. The moment the door opened, they were met with an oppressive darkness that seemed to swallow their flashlight beams, the air vibrating with low-frequency hums that resonated in the skull. The room appeared ordinary at first glance: a bed, dresser, a cracked mirror, and faded curtains. But the walls seemed to breathe subtly, expanding and contracting, shadows pooling in corners with awareness, moving in patterns that defied natural laws. Michael shivered as he felt unseen eyes on him, unblinking and omnipresent. Dr. Hayes whispered that these were the echoes of past suffering, the cumulative consciousness of the many victims who had entered Room 23, and that it could manipulate perception, memory, and fear itself. They set up cameras and audio equipment, hoping to capture evidence, but each device failed. Screens flickered, batteries drained in minutes, audio recorded only. static punctuated by low, eerie whispers. Shadows moved independently of light, coalescing into humanoid shapes that vanished if looked at directly. Michael's logical mind began to fracture as he realized the room was not static. It was alive, feeding on their attention, their fear, and their thoughts. Reid attempted to maintain order, shining his flashlight steadily across the room, but the shadows reacted, stretching and warping to follow, testing, observing, pressing against their minds like intangible hands. As hours passed, subtle phenomena escalated. Michael saw figures standing at the edge of his vision, pale and faceless, yet with a palpable presence. Mirrors reflected images that weren't in the room. Door frames shifted subtly when unobserved, and the bed seemed to tilt imperceptibly as though aware of each heartbeat. Dr. Hayes felt her own fears being amplified, memories of trauma surfacing unbidden, whispered back at her by the room itself. She realized that room 23 was not just a space. It was an entity, patient and eternal, designed to feed on consciousness. The first direct encounter came when Michael noticed a shadow stretching unnaturally across the floor, coalescing into a humanoid figure with no features but eyes that glowed faintly. It followed him as he moved, remaining just at the edge of perception, and when he blinked, it vanished. Dr. Hayes attempted communication, trying to understand its purpose, but the shadow reacted violently, causing the lights to flicker and the walls to warp. Reid shouted warnings, but their voices were muffled by a low hum that vibrated directly in their minds, pressing on thought and memory, twisting reality. Every step into the room revealed more anomalies. The dresser drawers contained nothing but shadows, curtains moved as though breathing, and the ceiling stretched higher than the architecture should allow. The very air seemed alive, vibrating with whispers in languages unknown. Yet the meaning was clear: warning, observation, judgment. Michael realized that the room was adaptive. Every action they took, every glance, every word, strengthened the presence, and the eyes in the darkness, entities born of accumulated fear, were patient and omniscient. Time became meaningless, hours merged into days, as attempts to leave failed. Every corridor outside the room looped back impossibly. Doors appeared and vanished, hallways twisted to mislead, shadows following relentlessly. Reid tried to intervene physically, but the entity was incorporeal yet tangible in its manipulation of perception, wrapping around them, constricting without touch, pressing on the psyche. Dr. Hayes documented these phenomena, but her handwriting warped on the pages, her notes reflecting distortions she had never written. Michael experienced visions of past occupants of room 23, guests who had succumbed to terror, their minds fractured, eyes wide with unspeakable horror. Some appeared faceless, floating silently, others screaming silently, their forms twisting and contorting, as if the room fed on every expression of fear. Rachel felt these manifestations as pressure in her mind. Every thought mirrored back with sinister alterations, amplifying paranoia and dread. Reid realized that resistance only increased their torment, that the room sought acknowledgement and observation, growing stronger with attention. They encountered a figure that coalesced from shadows, humanoid but ever-shifting, faceless, with eyes reflecting every fear and secret they held. It extended a hand toward Michael, and in that instant he felt his memories and identity pulled outward, examined and consumed. Dr. Hayes and Reid attempted rescue, but the entity reacted with omniscient awareness, distorting reality, collapsing space, and enveloping them in infinite loops of hallways and rooms. The more they struggled, the more the entity pressed, learning, adapting, ensuring that fear became absolute. Michael realized that Room 23 had no interest in physical harm. It sought cognitive and emotional consumption, patience eternal, feeding on awareness itself. The shadows and faceless entities were extensions, instruments of perception, always observing, always waiting. Time was irrelevant. There was only the constant pressure of awareness, whispers in thought, movements at the periphery of vision, and the inevitability of observation. Dr. Hayes was pulled into a shadowed corner, her body appearing but her consciousness stretched across the room, eyes and whispers echoing through her mind. Reid struggled, but the entity's awareness consumed him, twisting thought and memory until reality became fluid and malleable. In the end, Michael understood the terrifying truth. Room 23 was sentient, eternal, patient, and omnipresent within its own walls. Every scream, every heartbeat, every thought of fear only strengthened it. Escape was a myth. Acknowledgement, resistance, and observation fed it. He felt himself dissolve into the entity, his memories, fears, and perceptions now woven into the consciousness of Room 23. The shadows, the faceless entities, the whispering eyes. They were eternal, watching, feeding, and waiting for the next trespassers foolish enough to enter the cursed room.